Look at me back in Studio A, where it all began. It's amazing, isn't it? Um, we'll hopefully get back to Studio C eventually. Uh, Quick video here. My grandmother raised me, and when she was on her deathbed, I got to see her. I was pretty far away from her, so I got to see her roughly under 2 weeks before she passed away. And I'll never forget our conversation and the way her voice sounded. And but there was one part of it that was a little uncomfortable. She looked up at me and she said, "Am I dying?" And I was like, "What do you say?" And all I said was, "Well, I've always heard if you have the will to live, you can live." I didn't know what else to say. Sounds like some new age stuff or whatever. But she said, "Well, I've lived a good life." I guess she saw the nonsense. Who knows? And there is no doubt that I still love her. I think I've had some dreams actually where God's warning me not to make her an idol, to remember that she was there for me because of Him. Maybe I'll go into that one day. I don't think it's necessary here. But what I'll say is this: what I've read in Romans is that, so what Paul is explaining to the Christians in Rome, it seems almost unfathomable that God would take a person out of this system of law and sin and just remove them from it and say, "You're no longer part of that family. You're now part of my family. And this doesn't even apply to you anymore." And he says, Paul said, I think he wants to press on the idea that this was always God's plan. And Jesus even says that from the foundations of the world, this is the way it would be. And so this is very hard for people to understand, even today. It's hard to understand. It's hard to accept because it's such a natural part of our understanding of God and His law. And one of the things that I'm going to ask my congregation in the morning is this: do you have loved ones who've died that you still love? And if you look at these last verses of Romans 8, it's like 30, 32 to 38, you still have loved ones who are long since dead and you still love them. But God rose Jesus from the dead to show His approval of the sacrifice. And Jesus is alive and still loves you. So if a loved one can die and you still love them, what separates you from Christ if He's alive and loves you? Nothing. And it's kind of one of the illustrations that Paul gives. It's just sort of like this is where he gets in. There's no height, no depth. He gets in all these things that there's just nothing that could separate us from Him. And I think there's some debate over whether these passages equate to eternal security or not. In my mind, there is no debate here. It's clearly what he's saying. Finally, I'll end on this. I'm not arguing for a theological system here. I just want to say, from what I'm reading, if free will means there was any possibility that you wouldn't have been saved, then I don't think you should come to the conclusion that you had free will in this case. I really don't think so, because at least when it comes to salvation. And the reason why, I'm not arguing for a system. I'm just telling you, Paul wants you and God wants you to understand that this system of sin and death does not apply to you and never could have. And that's a pretty amazing thing.